In this video, I would like to give a summary of what happens in Act 1, Scene 2 of Hamlet by William Shakespeare. This scene takes place in the castle, Elsinore, the castle of the King of Denmark, who is Hamlet's uncle, and he's called King Claudius. And he's just come to the throne after the death of Old Hamlet, his brother and Hamlet's father. We move from the battlements, where we were in Act 1, Scene 1, to a courtroom, a stateroom of the court, where the king holds an audience and deals with his kingly duties, making decisions on behalf of Denmark, hearing his courtiers, their concerns, their questions, and deciding them then and there. We start the scene with quite a long speech by Claudius, which fills in the audience on some of the details of the events which have been happening, some of which we've heard before in Act 1, Scene 1. The big thing is that Old Hamlet, Claudius's brother, died, and then Claudius became king, and soon after that, Claudius married the wife and the widow of Old Hamlet, Gertrude, and that means that she is now once again queen. So she's Queen Gertrude, she's Claudius's husband, and that happened quite quickly, very quickly after the funeral of Old Hamlet. And Claudius, unsurprisingly, talks about his marriage to Gertrude in good terms, in positive terms. He seems to think that it's very favourable, very auspicious, which is quite different to how we see later in the scene Hamlet seeing that union. Because according to the Old Testament, such a marriage, marrying your brother's wife after your brother has died, would be seen as unclean. So an Elizabethan audience, the audience in Shakespeare's time, would know that. They would know that this would generally be seen to be unclean. Though the Danish court seems to have accepted it, there are solid reasons or understandable reasons why somebody else, like Hamlet especially, would not accept that union. Back to King Claudius' speech at the start of the scene. He's telling everybody about Old Hamlet dying and him marrying Gertrude, and that being a good thing. And then he also tells us that young Fortinbras, the son of Old Fortinbras, who was the Norwegian king whom Old Hamlet defeated in battle, that he is making preparations to invade Denmark because he doesn't want to give up these lands that he had to give away to Denmark as a result of his father losing a duel with Old Hamlet. He doesn't want to give that up. He underestimates, according to King Claudius, Denmark's strength, and I think the scene says that he doesn't want to release these lands, which are rightfully, legally part of Denmark now because of the contract that was set up during the duel between Old Fortinbras and Old Hamlet. So, as a result of Fortinbras, his machinations, him wanting to hold on to those lands, King Claudius decides to send 2 ambassadors to Norway, to the old Norwegian king, who is actually young Fortinbras' uncle. So there's lots of parallels between what's kind of happened in Norway and what's happening in Denmark in terms of succession. And I think one of those is Cornelius and Voltimand. He sends off to Norway, and they duly go. Then he's approached by a guy called Laertes, who is the son of Polonius, who is the Lord Chamberlain to King Claudius. And Laertes is a student in Paris, and he came back to the Danish court, in order to see the coronation of King Claudius. Now he wants to go back, and he asks Claudius for permission to do so. Claudius then asks Polonius, "What do you think?" And Polonius says he begrudgingly allowed his son to go. So he's allowed to go. Then we turn to Hamlet, who is really severely grieving for his father. Claudius and Gertrude tell him, "Stop grieving. You've grieved enough by now. And also, can you stay here instead of going back to university in Wittenberg?" Hamlet says, "Yes, I'll stay." That makes them very happy. But then he grieves even more. Then Hamlet turns to Marcellus and Horatio, and they tell him about seeing Old Hamlet, the ghost of Old Hamlet, and Hamlet agrees to go and see that ghost later that night.